Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of African Battle Royale. Let's get right into it. Nigeria will be invading West. And this is going to happen pretty much directly after the Gold Alliance forms. Nigeria doesn't like any part of it because there's only 3 countries Benin can expand into, and Nigeria is probably the most lucrative of those. They don't want South Africa to invade into them, so they start invading into Benin instead. And pretty quickly, Benin is going to fold because South Africa basically says, "Hey, this is a strictly offensive alliance, which is the opposite of most alliances, but in this case, that is the case." And so South Africa doesn't have to help Benin in a defensive war, and so they don't. And Benin has been fully annexed into Nigeria. The Central African Republic will unite Northwest. So the Central African Republic will be uniting with Chad. And Chad is doing this because they want to join the Brown Alliance, but Zimbabwe won't let them. Unless they basically do it by uniting with the CAR, and the CAR is okay with that. So that's why they unite. So now the Brown Alliance has just become very powerful. Probably still not as powerful as the Dark Blue Alliance, but getting up there. Somalia will be uniting south. So Somalia is going to be uniting with Tanzania. This is also going to merge their alliances together, so Togo is now part of the Peace Alliance. But I'm actually going to do something interesting here. Instead of erasing their border, it still exists within the Union, but they've kind of federalized into one country, but it still has a de facto border between them. So if they ever expand, then that border will remain between them. So they're kind of independent from each other, but for the purposes of the series, they will be considered as one country on the wheel, for example. So let's do that. Namibia will be invading southeast. So Namibia basically is trying to get a coalition together of people who want to get rid of South Africa. And I actually do have a few countries that want to join them on this endeavor. Obviously Botswana, but also Lesotho, Eswatini, and Madagascar, which is also merged with Mauritius, I think. All agree to join them, as well as, most importantly, Zimbabwe, because that gets the CAR, which stands for the Chad African Republic now, involved, and they're going to be using the Suez to send troops all the way around and into Zimbabwe to help as much as they can. They've already been doing that. So things are maybe not going to go very well for South Africa, especially because Zimbabwe is already roughly equal to them in power, and then you add in all these other countries, although Lesotho is being invaded and taken, as well as Eswatini fairly quickly, but them focusing their military there does allow for a small front line to be made all the way across the border between South Africa and their enemies. Madagascar will make a landing over here in an attempt to free the 2 countries that have been destroyed, and Eswatini will actually be landed in by Zimbabwe, allowing for them to be taken. And Zimbabwe is doing most of the heavy lifting. They merge with the army of Madagascar, who is kind of helping but not in a very noticeable way. Similarly, Malawi gets involved in this war, sending troops to help out via Zimbabwe, but they're also not really that impactful. But it just shows South Africa that no one really wants them to win this war, and in fact, there are 0 countries in Africa that want South Africa to win this war. So while they keep holding out for now, the South African citizens don't really want this war, while the government does. And because the government's a dictatorship, some rebels are going to pop up, starting around Cape Town, and then just kind of spread throughout the country. Obviously, they're also going to be in Lesotho, and just all of South Africa is now also facing a rebellion. And the rebellion starts to basically become more powerful than the actual South African government, which is a dictatorship. And the rebellion basically signs an agreement with all invading powers to give them some of the land in exchange for actually having South Africa be a state. And Lesotho is basically given independence again. So they're helping out. And before long, South Africa has gained its independence. So these are the new borders of Southern Africa. South Africa, with their new government, is here. Botswana and Namibia. This is Lesotho and this is Eswatini. They both got a lot of land for participating in the war because they were occupied and atrocities were committed on their citizens by the old South African government. So, yeah. Mauritius, Madagascar will be making an alliance with Cape Verde. And if you don't know, this is Mauritius, Madagascar, and this is Cape Verde. They're, I think, the only two remaining island nations, so that's probably the reason they would make an alliance together. Madagascar had just fought in a war, so maybe they realized that war is no joke, and they want an ally, and Cape Verde is willing to be that ally. Guinea will be invading northeast. So they'll be invading into Mali, and they will get Guinea-Bissau to join them. And for now, that's the only countries that they got to join them. So it's a pretty terrible invasion. Of course, though, they weren't just invading with them in Guinea-Bissau. That would be ridiculous. The Tan Alliance is going to join them. And there's a bunch of useless desert up here in Mali, but it's surrounding the city of Timbuktu, which is important, which I think is around here. We'll say it's around there, which is getting closer and closer to being taken as all of the useless desert, I wouldn't say falls is the right word because it wasn't really being defended, nor is there really anything there. But these guys have special desert troops that they use to move troops into there, which allows them to invade from all directions. Mali, having to reorganize their forces, decides to abandon Guinea altogether. And Sierra Liberia, which is this country, will also join in on the war. Mali's ally in Zambia isn't really able to do anything because Congo doesn't let them. And so they just have to watch as their only ally is being dismantled. Togo asks permission from the Dark Blue Alliance to join, but they are not given it, so they stay out of it because they really like being part of the most powerful alliance in Africa. Meanwhile, Timbuktu just got captured. The capital of Mali has, I think, long since been captured. So Timbuktu is probably their new capital, but now Mali is basically no longer has a state. Like, the government just doesn't exist. The citizens will surrender, but that doesn't really mean anything, so Mali will be dismantled. And you might have noticed 2 countries got land that maybe shouldn't have, that being Togo and Nigeria. Togo got land because they had basically offered to join in on the war before they had to rescind their offer, and they basically begged for land, and these guys wanted to have a good relations with the Dark Blue Alliance, so they gave Togo the land, even though the Dark Blue Alliance now has strained relations with Togo. Meanwhile, Nigeria was threatening them, saying if we don't get any of Mali's land, we're going to be aggressive towards you, so they also gave Nigeria some land. Let's do one more event and then end the episode. Guinea-Bissau will be making an alliance with Rwanda. And we're going to re-establish the Pink Alliance now between Guinea-Bissau and Rwanda. Rwanda used to be pretty much the smallest country in Africa, although Guinea-Bissau might have been the actual smallest. But now Guinea-Bissau is even smaller than it used to be, and Rwanda is pretty respectable in their size. But they're just joining forces because they have good relations with each other. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.